So appointment setting. So why not focus on customer base? We know it's easier to start with some form of relationship as opposed to going after net new. So the thought process is let's go ahead and jump into our base and figure out what opportunities that we can develop within our base using existing resource, existing customers. So we'll jump in here and go through the different categories that you can look into, whether that's for voice or that's for taking a existing IT customer that may be break fix over to managed IT contract, or bringing cybersecurity services to an existing managed IT. So there's a variety of different versions you can apply this to in different customers, and the thought process is let's build a framework that can be repeated, that you can go after and apply it to existing base. So we'll jump in here and break down the process into kind of 5 categories. So to start with, we want to define the strike zone, meaning who are we going to identify? We're going to choose 10 accounts, and what's the process of choosing those? And the thought process is, we'll get into detail, but the thought process is that we want to cherry pick and give ourselves the best opportunity to be successful. And so we'll go through a kind of a checklist of how we do that and how we want to think about it. And as we're going through this presentation, think about customer base, maybe make some notes of things that come to mind, and how it applies to your situation, your customers, your offerings. So then we'll transition over here to, do we use existing resources or hire new? We've had tag members that have been successful in doing both ways. We found that it is easier if you take an existing employee for this type of scenario, because one, it's more of a rifle approach as opposed to a shotgun approach. So it's not as challenging to go in and spend the time needed, since you're rifling in to targeted accounts. So you don't need necessarily to bring in someone brand new to focus on it. If you have the ability to have either a customer advocate, a salesperson, or owner, and that's probably going to be the fastest way to get ramped up and see some quick results. So we'll jump into how to use a proven script. So there is no perfect script, but there are ones that are better than others, right? And so this is something that we've been developing at TAG with numerous TAG members as we're going through the process and figuring out which ones make the most sense, which ones are getting pushback, which ones do we really want to fine-tune and make work for different offerings, and build these into a framework or a blueprint that would be easy to follow. Then we'll go into how to structure and execute the appointment setting process. And there's a structure to it, and the thought process is put it into a program that is 4 weeks, and step by step we know what to do, when to do it, so that it takes the guessing out of it. And lastly, we'll touch on how to leverage TAG's resources to really make this program a success. So getting started, defining the strike zone. It's important to know who we're going to be reaching out to, why, what we're going to be offering them. And so how do we go through this process? And it's really cherry picking who we want to work with in our base. And this is where it's important to start thinking about your own base and what opportunities may be there. So we want to look at first, choose a solution. So are we going to be presenting managed IT? Are we going to be presenting a cloud voice solution, cybersecurity? What is that going to be? And we start with that, and then from there, we take a look at, okay, what is the ideal profile? If it's a managed IT, maybe we want to go after customers that are going to be, say, 20 to 30 seats, and that could be a sweet spot. Now, depending on the base, maybe higher, maybe lower. Everyone's going to be a little bit different, but the point is we want to figure out who's ideal from a profile standpoint. That includes seats, that may include verticals or industries, For example, vertical, maybe financial services. If that's a heavy type of customer in your base, then maybe you want to look at that because you know there's a number of talking points around compliancy, protecting data, and all those things. So we want to outline what makes sense for your customer base of ideal profile based on the solution you're choosing to go and cherry pick. Then we want to evaluate the relationships. So relationship side of things, look at who within the customer base, once you have the first two chosen, the relationship is going to be one of the things that helps progress the sales forward the most. For example, if you have been doing business with someone for a number of years, first name basis, maybe kids play sports together on the weekends, those might be the cherry-picked accounts because you know that if you pick up the phone, reach out, try to set an appointment, then chances are, based on that relationship, that they're probably going to at least give you the respect to sit down and talk to them. You want to also evaluate who are the right people within that chosen account that you need to meet with. Just because you have a good relationship with maybe the receptionist or maybe the one of the accounting people there, that might not be the right person to get in front of for your purposes. So you want to think about that, of tying them in. How can we pull them in as an influencer or someone that's going to help be a part of the process and really identify that and map that out. So all considerations you want to take a look at as we're building this strike zone and cherry picking these accounts. Other considerations is things that we might not think of right out of the gates in building this list, such as if we're going to have a base of CPA firms, and that's for whatever reason that's been a focus, or we just have a number of accounts that fit that build. Well, maybe we want to not go after those if it's going to be tax time, or maybe if they're going to be moving and have a hands full, we know we're already taking care of the move. They're not going to have time to sit down and evaluate bringing on other solutions. So we want to just be aware of that and be cognizant. So that way we're not coming in, and again, it comes back to giving us the best chance of success. So if we know there's going to be some sort of event or barrier or something, then we want to at least be aware of that. And it doesn't mean we can't reach out to them, but maybe right now is not the right time. So we put that on the second go-around of picks. So considering all the different variables, come up with, based on these kind of four categories of developing that top 10 list where we think we're going to have the best chance of success. Once we do that, then we're going to run Dark Web Report so that we have a talking point that matches up with the script that we'll be using. And probably 8 or 9 out of 10 of those accounts will have some sort of hit on it. And you can use either the ID agent Dark Web or Continuums. Both will give you, if you compare the two of them, they'll give you a little bit different information because they're going out and pulling the information from the Dark Web from, say, the top 50 or top 100 sites within the Dark Web that those credentials may be listed on. So they may have different information. You can choose to use either or both. But it should populate, out of those 10 that you run, you should have at least an 80% hit on those. So who makes the call? This is a big one because you want to take into account, one of the biggest things is the relationship. If you as the owner is going to be making the calls, which we're seeing majority of people participating in this program, the owner is actually making the call because they're very targeted and it's relationship-based, being a customer, is that you want to set them up for success, whoever's going to be making the call. So if it is the owner, great. If it is the salesperson who originally sold it and is also still in touch with them, that may be appropriate. If it's a customer advocate who's managing, then that may be appropriate. You can always hire someone, and I know there's tag members that have hired. We've had mixed success with hiring new. Depends on a number of variables, but it's a bigger risk factor and a bigger unknown because you have to do a number of things with a new hire. One is find the right person, which isn't always the easiest. You have to make sure that you take the time to, once you find that person, bring them on, train them, get them brought into the position. And really, for these types of calls in this program, it's much faster, easier, and less capital intensive if you use an existing resource. So we'll lean heavily towards that. It'll be a one-off call if you want to go deep. If anyone wants to go deep into how to hire someone for this type of role or program, feel free to reach out and we'll go through that process. But for most success of this program, we'd recommend using existing team members or resources. So making the call and what to say. So one of the hardest parts to getting started for most is just picking up the phone and what do I say? I don't want to sound like a fool. I don't want to stutter, stammer, or trip over my words. And what we found is that we think that the script is the secret sauce, and it is important, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is simply making the call. And we've heard really bad calls that have gone off script and somehow set an appointment. And then we've also had the reverse, where it's a perfect call, perfect opportunity, and it just did not result in an appointment. Consistency in making the calls and trying to follow script as a guide is going to produce the best results, though. So what we did is we've been working on a script and developing it over the last several months, working with a number of tag members, and this is an example of it. So we'll jump in here to basically this is where the gatekeeper is we call the prospect, the customer that is going to be prospect for a new offering. We say, hello, this is Ryan from iNet. I need to speak with Jack. Is he available? So two important things to pull out of this is one is urgency and the other is familiarity. So familiarity is already kind of built into this because of the nature of the list we're calling on. They're a customer, depending on how we prioritize the list and how we chose those 10. In theory, since we cherry-picked them, they probably know who we are, and we probably have some sort of relationship with that person. Urgency side of it is to get through the gatekeeper receptionist so that they feel through tempo, through tone, and through the words we use that we need to speak with Jack or we need to speak with a contact, and that's going to minimize the gatekeeper from putting up roadblocks and not pushing us through. So we go through that. They may ask, what is this regarding? Typically, they push it right through. If they do, we want to keep it simple. We don't want to get into too much details with the front-end gatekeeper because the whole goal of this is to get to the decision maker, set an appointment. We don't want to get caught up in the weeds, especially on the front end with the gatekeeper. So if they do ask, if they don't put us right through, simply respond. Jack has been a long-time customer of ours, and we do the service on your phone system or insert whatever the existing technology is, IT, office equipment, etc. And then important part is always circle back to what we're trying to accomplish in the direction that we're leading this call, because we don't want to hand it over to the receptionist or even the decision maker to lead the call. That's on us, and we want to maintain control of that if at all possible. So we don't just leave this statement hanging. We always circle back and guide the conversation where we want it to go by asking a directing question, or is Jack in the office today? And that typically gets us through. Once we get Jack on the phone, the reality is most of the time we're going to hit voicemail, whether it's a net new prospect or a customer base. If you run the numbers, more often than not, you're going to get the voicemail. So in the event of voicemail, this is what we're going to do. We're going to say, Jack, this is Ryan Mulvaney from iNet. The reason I'm calling you is because you've been a long-time loyal customer of ours, and out of courtesy, we decided to run a dark web scan on your company to identify compromised information, such as email passwords. I'm not sure if you've heard of the dark web, but essentially it's where hackers buy and sell stolen information, such as email account passwords and other sensitive personal information. When that information is purchased on the dark web, it is then used in a variety of destructive and malicious ways. So what are we doing here? We're doing a couple of things. One is planting a seed and referencing the email passwords and them being compromised. We reference it a couple times so they start to understand what we're talking about, and then we set the stage of what the first appointment is going to be all about, of reviewing that information. And then we circle down to, okay, once we set the stage here and we're assuming they don't know what the dark web is, then we're going to circle to the next statement of, when we ran this, basically this is what's in it for them. Why is it important? Why should they listen? Why should they meet with us? So this addresses that question that they're thinking. When we ran the report for XYZ company, we did find that you've been compromised and would like to meet with you to share how you can mitigate the resulting damage, along with what can be done to better protect against this happening in the future. Then we simply, say ask for a call back to schedule an appointment. I want them to know that the reason why we're calling is because of the compromised information, and we want to help prevent any damage. And we'd like them to call us back for an appointment. Make it easy and repeat our name and number so they don't have to listen to the whole thing again. Always want to make it easy for them. So this is, most cases, going to come across voicemail. In the event that we don't, then we want to say the same thing, but ask for an appointment. And again, make it easy. Instead of saying what time is good for you, we suggest that we say, how about next, this Thursday afternoon work, or even a specific time Thursday afternoon. Then that way it is more them checking if that time works, and if so, perfect, as opposed to putting more work on them, saying, okay, when is good for you later this week or next week? Then they go down a rabbit hole of, okay, well, what do I have on my schedule? Is this a priority? How important is this? They'll probably try to qualify it further. So we want to eliminate that, make a suggestion of what time, and see if we can set the appointment. So I referenced a couple of times, we've been working with a number of TAG members over the last several months, primarily Dale and myself, and so we've been trying this, we've been optimizing the scripts, we've been optimizing the process, the format, how we're doing it, and we've been having, success with a number of members doing it. So I want to share those real quick just to bring it to light. So Gateway Telnet, and keep in mind here, there's a few here, and they've been taking the script, but either using it exactly or modifying it depending on what they're trying to accomplish. And so we'll help do that as well. If there's modifications and things that we want to focus in on that stray away a little bit from this, we'll help modify it depending on the need. So case in point here is Gateway Telnet with Jerry. So they had a little different situation where they want to focus on the base because there's tremendous opportunity as a large base, but it was more so for the voice side because they have a large base of Toshiba. And as most of us know, Toshiba is going away, and so that Jerry came up with a message of how support and that product is going away and why, and then had a customer advocate reach out and ask for appointments based on that. So we modified the script and worked it from that approach and had great success with Jerry. So Jerry, within the first 3 to 4 weeks, his appointment setter, his customer advocate, set 25 plus appointments. So Jerry had to schedule him almost a month out at this point, and is starting to redirect some things so he can hit all these. So great success there. BTS Technologies is another one we're actively working with. We went through the first phase of cherry picking 10 accounts. We went through the process. It was a learning experience on both sides. We made some fine-tuning adjustments, and now we're circling back to the second 10, starting off a second round of it. And that's going to be, we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's the goal here, is not just to be one and done, set it up and do it once with a 10, but this is a repeatable process that ideally can be done in 4 weeks and cycle through cherry picking 10 accounts every 4 weeks that will result in a handful or more of appointments that will keep the team more busy than they can handle. So BTS went through, just finished their first program. So they set 8 appointments. Of those, they're in the sales process with a number of them. And I just got a call with their team earlier this morning. They're picking another 10 to cherry pick that we're going to kick off next week to go through the whole process again. And they've learned a lot in the first process, in the first program to go around at this, so they're going to apply all that to the second one to make it that much better. Voice and data systems is another. Dale been primarily working with them over the last several months. They've set 11 plus appointments through this process. So members are using it, and they're using it successfully to go in and work their base instead of going after net new of opportunities to say, okay, let's look at our base, figure out who we want to work with, what we want to offer them, and then strategically go in and work the program. So what is all this? What do we do with all this now? Now we've gotten a broad overview of the program. What are next steps, and how do we actually take this and implement it into our business so that we can execute on the program? So 4-week program is how we envision it, to go in and start from this overview of what does it look like conceptually to 4 weeks later having gone through the whole process, reached out, set appointments, and ideally being in the sales process with a number of them, and then making the decision, do we focus on closing these because we have so much to do here, or we have enough resources and time to circle back through and do another 10. So what does that look like? First week, we set up a recurring call for the first week, and we talk about exactly what we focus here, cherry picking 10 companies, running dark web, choosing what solution, what's the profile, evaluate the relationships on their side and on your side of who has the best relationships and with who, and how are we going to work that into the outreach and the appointments and the sales process. On the second week, we actually review and practice a script, role play a bit, and overcome what I like to call RBOs, a borrowed term from a book called Fanatical Prospecting, which basically outlines how to effectively build out a prospecting campaign. And one of the things in there they talk about is RBOs, which is the acronym for reflex responses, brush-offs, and objections. Pretty much all things that someone can tell you that either mean no or a maybe. And so as part of this process in week 2, we go through and say, okay, what do we anticipate getting as a no or a maybe? And what does those look like? Is it I'm too busy right now? Is it that, say if we're doing cybersecurity, they say something about we don't have the money for a program or a budget, and we build out a short list of those, and typically there's only about 5 to 7 said in different ways that people say no or maybe. When we document those, then once we have those documented, we'll look at those and say, okay, what would be our best response to those? And then we'll discuss that, and then we'll document that as well. And so in addition to the script, we understand that they're not all going to be, yes, absolutely, come meet with me tomorrow, I'll be waiting. Some are going to be absolute no's, and no's are okay, we move on to the next one, but the maybes are where we hone in on, if they say this, what is our response going to be, so we're not guessing. We actually have it outlined, and we practice it so it sounds natural. So that will be focused in week 2. So we have a real comfort level going in after that week 2 that, okay, now we're ready to make calls. We have the script. We know what we're trying to accomplish in the solution. We know who we're reaching out to. We've practiced the script. We've role-played. And we know what we're going to say if they say some sort of brush-off or objection or reflex response. So we start making the calls after that second call. Going into week 3 then is a time to really look at some recordings, review the progress that's made, and then optimize it. So then provide some coaching, some feedback, some further guidance. Maybe if you said it this way versus that way, it could help, and really dive into the success so far with those the first round of calls. Then go into the 4th week and really evaluate the progress. At this point, reached out to all 10, and figure out where do those lie. Have we set X number of appointments, or have we met with those people? How's it going? What do we learn from it? What are next steps? And then figure out, okay, do we focus on those because we have 7 appointments now that we have to go get network assessments and analyzers on that we can that we just need to focus on the sales process with those, or do we have enough resources to circle back through this and another 4-week program to keep filling the front end of the funnel and create more opportunities, or tweak it to focus on maybe voice instead of IT to give one team or side of the house a break over the other. So that is the overview of the whole program. And as you know, as TAG members, you have access to the whole team here to help accomplish this. You know, I've been working with, I think, about 8 companies now, 8 members to help go through this process, and we'll be as hands-on or hands-off as you want. If you say, I understand the process, maybe just if I call you, have a question, answer that, perfect, happy to do that. Or if you say, Ryan, you know, I like to help lead my customer advocate in this process, will you do that? Happy to do that as well and lead the process, or sit on the sidelines and help them get feedback only when I'm asked. So we're here to help implement as much or as little of this as you like. So I'm going to end the presentation here. I'm going to open this back up. I did mute because I was getting some feedback. Let me see if I can pull it off the mute, and we'll open up the questions here.
The attendees are now unmuted.
Okay, we are unmuted here. So any questions on anything you saw here?
Is it possible to get a copy of the deck by chance? Take a look at those script options that you put out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can send it individually today if you like, or this has been recorded. And so if you give us about 24 hours, 48 hours, it'll be recorded and put up on our website for you to access.
Oh, that's perfect. We'll give you it that way.
As well.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions here?
I got comments, not a question.
Okay, all right. I'll accept those as well.
Okay, so this is Vic. We actually did something very similar working with Dale.
Yep.
Instead of doing the existing base, we went to the model of hiring somebody to go and do the cold calling and going out for new business after they went through a drip email campaign. And I've got to say a few things that are really, really, really crucial here. If you're thinking about hiring somebody from outside to come in, be very careful in what you hire, how you hire, and the amount of time that it's going to go and drain from you. The woman that I hired passed the disc, flying results. Dale interviewed her. We set up a training appointment, and she turned out to be, after about 30 days, almost kind of an abject failure. I mean, I did get a handful of appointments out of it, and hopefully we'll be able to close 1 or 2 of them kind of to justify it. But she was a time drain like you wouldn't believe. So if you're hiring someone else, that's a really big issue.
Yeah, that's why we've heard it. So you're not alone in that, Vic. There's been a couple of those instances, and that's why we're leaning heavily towards, if you have an existing resource or can find one, whether it's the owner, yourself, salesperson, or customer advocate, it alleviates that headache and the unknown of going out and finding and training and as much processing of the resume and the candidate and disc test and all of that. You know, it's still, like you just said, you just don't know. So if you can use existing resources, highly recommend that.
The second thing that we learned that is really, really important, and it's probably the most painful thing you can do, which is listening to the calls. So we recorded all the calls, and then we listened to them, and it was kind of like listening to nails on a chalkboard. It was that uncomfortable. But you got to get over that discomfort, and you've got to do it in order to go and improve.
Yep, critical part of the, I think it's the second or the third week there, we outlined listening to recordings, coaching, and yeah, a critical piece.
And the third thing that's really important, that was really important on our end, it's managing the metrics. It's the only thing that you can go and measure. And you've got to go and measure how many calls you're making, what is the response rate, what is it going to take to go and do it, so that you've got some outcome for yourself. And it's, you kind of have to psych yourself up to know that every no is going to take you closer to that yes.
Yeah, and we'll take the yes and the no's all day long, but the maybes are the ones that kill us. We keep on having to work them. We're not sure. So yeah, and it makes it easier too. It's a great point, Vic. And for this program, since we're only cherry picking 10, it makes it a lot more manageable in terms of how to track and measure and set goals on, you know, what you're reaching out to, because it's a very short targeted list. So it makes it a lot more manageable from that standpoint, because you're not trying to track a list of hundreds of prospects that you're reaching out to in different forms of email and whatnot. It's simply, let's choose 10 customers, let's figure out why and how we're going to reach out to them, and then apply the process, and it's very targeted phone calls. So yeah, it takes a lot of those extra metrics out of it and simplifies it a little bit from a tracking standpoint. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, if not, I'll wrap this up, and if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to me directly, and if anyone is interested in either talking more about this or maybe modifying it to some other things that you're thinking as I was going through this, be happy to take those calls or emails. And of course, if you actually want to implement this program, then let me know, and as I said, I'll be as hands-on or just a simple resource on the side as you like. So I'll work with any of you that would like to do that. Just let me know. Appreciate the time here. I'll let you get back to the busy days, and thank you, and hope to talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.